say hi to everybody that's on our Facebook Live feed to start with, and we'll jump right into this. This is Warren and Will's Wild Wine Reviews. My name is Warren. I'm the Warren of the Warren and Will, which will probably let you guess who the Will is. At any rate, I've had over 2,000 different wines that I've reviewed on Vivino, where I'm a featured user, and that's pretty much my...
And I'm Will. I'm a certified sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers. I'm also a featured user on Vivino, and together we are
Warren and Will's Wild Wine Review. And if you're not with Vivino, go get Vivino, and then you can follow both Will
Absolutely.
and I on Vivino, which I think is a great thing to do. It's a lot of fun. So let's kind of jump in. I've got the information on this Orin Swift.
One of your
wine.
favorites.
It's one of my favorite wines. It's Orin Swift's Mercury Head Cabernet Sauvignon 2019. That's the youngest wine we have ever reviewed. Mm-hmm. We've never done anything.
Yeah, this, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
We are committing infanticide right now, unfortunately. I wish that I could wait longer, but then you guys wouldn't be able to get your hands on this wine. And at $165 a bottle, I prefer. So $169.95.
Yeah.
I prefer that you have the opportunity to get it now instead of a million years from now,
right,
when it'll be $300 or $400 a bottle.
Right.
So this gets 4.7 stars. The 2019 does. It's their highest rated out of 5, with 295 reviews.
Right.
The ABV is a whopping 16.1%.
Wow.
And as I said, the national average price is $169.95. The winemaker's Dave Finney, and I know a whole bunch of you out there are right now saying, no, Dave Finney sold that because he's not with The Prisoner or with Orin Swift anymore. You were right. He did sell it. He did go away, and now he's come back and he works for them. He doesn't own it anymore. He owns Orin. He owns his other.
He does Shatter. I don't remember the name of it either, but I know.
Shatter,
he does. He does a bunch of European
Signposts, D66, some very, very good wines. I like Dave Finney's wines, whether he's making them for his own label or for Orin Swift, which was a combination of his dad's middle name, I believe was Orin, and his mom's last name was Swift, or her maiden name, and that's how we came up with that. And then he sold it and bought a bunch of other vineyards.
Yeah.
So Dave Finney got hooked on wine in 1995 when he was traveling in Europe, and then in 1997 he worked as a temporary harvest worker for Robert Mondavi's winery, which is when he got into it. And then in 1998 he founded Orin Swift Cellars. Now this is all Cabernet, and it's from 3 different vineyards. It's from the Stagecoach Vineyard, the Morrisoli Vineyard, and the Taplin Llewellyn Vineyard. I really just didn't feel like coming up with exactly how big all 3 of them were.
Right. Stagecoach is one I've heard of before.
Yeah, I've had their Stagecoach and the Priest. If they're from the same vineyard, then those are good. This has been aged for 13 months in French oak. 43% of that oak was new.
Okay.
So that's the information
Sounds about right for Dave Finney
to save with you, or to share with you guys.
There you go.
So I'm not sure if we should do this through the aerator. I did use the aerator when I decanted this an hour ago. So this is got an hour of decanting.
So you decanted it into the decanter through the aerator.
Exactly.
Oh wow!
To give it as much aeration as I could.
Yeah.
Since I know this is a really big,
definitely Dave Finney.
A huge nose, absolutely huge.
The first thing that smacks you in the face on this one is blackberry. This is definitely a very emblematic. It's Napa Valley,
For me, it's oak and blackberries.
Yeah, I mean, and as we know, the oak is my deficit, so it makes sense that I would
flip our thing over. Oh, that's huge.
You know what this is reminding me of? It's the California version of the Doubleback.
Yeah, I would say so.
The Doubleback had a very similar aroma. The Doubleback had, to me, a silkier mouthfeel, and this is a little rougher. I mean, granted, it's also a 2019, so this is, as Warren
it's still
mentioned,
soft. It's a soft mouthfeel.
Oh, yeah.
It's not as silky as some that are 5 or 10 years old.
It's not as silky, and there's that alcohol heat is behind it.
And you'll note this is the Mercury Head, so we got a little Mercury Head dime.
An actual, it's not a replica. It's an actual real one.
You can tell there's still lots and lots of time left in the aging. You do not need to drink the 2019 now. It's drinking fine because all of Dave Finney's wines drink well out of the bottle. but
we're drinking it for scientific purposes only.
right. Normally, I hold on to him longer. You know, some of his wines at 15 years are sublime. I've really enjoyed the ones that I've gotten my hands on that were old.
And not to this is one of those phenomena that certain bands inspire this as well. And this isn't to detract from the quality or the truth of the reviews, but I do want to point out that Dave Finney is one of those guys who inspires a very fanatical devotion and his. So there might be other wines out there where people, Warren always tries to find the name of the winemaker if he can. A lot of these people we just haven't heard of. And it's not because they're not good at what they do, it's that, But Dave Finney is one of those people that's well known.
He's a rock star.
Mm-hmm. And so the people that are buying his wines, as good as they are also probably giving them 5 stars and saying they're the best thing they've ever had. And they're not lying or artificially inflating it. But he does inspire that kind of passion in his followers. So it doesn't surprise me to see that wines of his are highly rated, both
Always
because of the quality
rated,
and the culture,
the cult culture.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I remember when The Prisoner, back in like 2008, when The Prisoner was just one of the hottest things.
Yeah, I
in
loved
the
The Prisoner back then.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do as much for me now. And
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know if
I
that's
mean,
because I've moved away from Zins as being my grape of choice, or if
you're not the only
they're
one who
not as
said
good
that.
as they used
You're
to
not
be.
the only one who said that. So I don't think
Yeah.
it's just you moving away from Zen.
I don't either, but at the same time, I have moved away from Zins,
Yeah.
so I do have to deal with trying to decide how much of it is that.
The blackberry on this is not overpowering, but it's the dominant aroma
I've got
that I'm getting
blackberry,
off of it.
I've got cedar and eucalyptus in the
Yeah, I was
mid-range,
gonna say-
really strong, kind of still holding on into the back end of it even.
Yeah, it's not quite like the spearmint, but there's a mentholated type of
cedar taste that I have is still extending from the mid-range all the way into the finish, which is kind of unusual. I don't run into that very often.
Oh yeah, no, it's. When I said earlier this isn't as silky as double bag, that's setting a pretty high bar.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
still got
it's
a
still
very
quite
pleasant
silky.
mouthfeel. I didn't in any way mean to say that it's not drinkable. It's very pleasant. It was just thinking about how the flavor aromas were similar to the double back, and then you can tell that this was grown in a warmer climate than the double back was.
And it's still tight right now.
This
Is definitely tight. I mean,
Which
I
is
took it
saying
out
a
of
lot for an hour.
I took it out of my cellar like 2.5 to 3 hours ago, and let it come up as close to room temperature as it would get. And then once we got here, which I have to discuss, we are here at Katrina's Art Above Floyd's. You should definitely, when she opens back up in February, come here and make some purchases to say thank you for allowing us to have this wonderful space to do the wine tasting in.
And see the rest of her space, because she's got a really nice little
the
alcove
artwork.
here, right above Main Street.
Floyd, right above
Mhm,
Floyd,
yeah.
just like the name says.
Yep, exactly what it says on the tin.
But yeah, this one's a little tight, and then once I got here, which is at Art Above Floyd, we decanted it an hour ago. So it's been out. The storage facility that I have it in was probably about 45 degrees when I pulled it 3 hours
Which is
ago.
your spring house.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not a spring house.
Well, no,
but,
it looks like a spring house.
Yeah.
It's built into the hillside.
It is built. It was burned into the
Yeah,
hillside.
exactly.
It wasn't built in. We brought the hillside to it.
Right.
I had one guy say, "Hey, you can't do this. I'm gonna have to go in there and fix it." And he was saying this to me while the person standing next to me, who had already done that,
Right.
I said, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You can't push in all that dirt on these cement blocks and have it not fall in." He's like, "So you don't think 3 pounds of cement and rebar would reinforce it enough?" He's like, "Well, that would be fine if somebody had done that." And Toshi's like raising his hands. "Yes, I have." So it came out of there, and so it's still a little colder than I would like it to be. I'd like it to be about 5 degrees warmer.
Well, that's the nice thing about increasing the surface area exposure. It'll warm up really nicely in the glass.
Yeah. If you want
I
to warm
have a
up your
question,
wine.
by the way.
Oh.
Okay.
Perfect.
Someone newly tuned in just asked how much is the bottle actually?
It was $165. I believe I paid a little less than that, but that's the average for it right now. If you can get it, you can get it. It's for sale on Vivino and a number of other places. So it's $165 a bottle.
The Orin Swift wines are pricier. Do you happen to know off the top of your head what the cheapest Orin Swift wine? I want to say.
Yeah, it's the Signpost, and it's going for like $20.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the
Oh,
Signpost
I
ones,
didn't.
none of them are very expensive.
Yeah. The signposts are interesting. He takes grapes. He has the symbol is the country's first letter, and then like a sort of
those little stickers people put on the back of
it's a rondelle of their national flag.
Yeah.
And then he takes grapes that are emblematic of that country's expression. And in Italy, it's 3 different Italian varietals. In France, I think it's like Grenache and Syrah, so I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah,
and then Spain does Tempranillo. And, exactly.
New Zealand, he does Cabernet Blanc.
The Sauvignon Blanc.
Jeez, I don't know why I'm having trouble with words like that.
But the neat thing is it's not meant to be a specific representation of a specific region. It's more of like an overall look at the country and then blending their different grapes together. And it's neat. It's a neat little project. Did you do one for Greece?
I haven't seen it. If you did, I know he did one for Texas.
Yes, I remember that.
Surprisingly good. Who would have thought?
Texas actually up in the I think it's the High Plains AVA
has the biggest nose of anything I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, some of those New Zealand wines are nuttily aromatic because of all the
it's
methoxy
white.
years.
It's just so big on the nose.
Yeah, I feel like in an alternate reality, you could have gotten as into New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc because you did some other things.
I doubt it.
In an alternate reality where your palate were more geared towards white wines that weren't, because the thing is that one of the reasons you like the Rieslings is they have big expressive aromas, and then they have palates that are big and thick
complicated. There's a lot.
And the thing is that a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc might have a big, interesting, complicated nose, but on the palate, it's not necessarily going to be as complex.
So who asked the question? I just wanted to say thanks.
Dante Carter.
Oh, hey, Dante. Grandson. He is Doug's son.
Awesome. Well, that's cool. I am assuming that most of the viewership comes from your friend group.
Yeah, well, I mean, it should. It's on my friends list.
Right.
We're doing it here because we don't. I mean, we've got like 50 people, I think, following our Warren and Will's Wild Wine reviews.
Yeah.
And January we're gonna start pushing a little harder to get more people.
Yeah.
So then at some point we'll probably start doing it from there once there's enough people, and we'll get people that'll eventually show up there that won't be in my friends list.
Right.
We gotta wait for that till the numbers get bigger, but we're gonna start putting some money into pushing this stuff and see what we can do with it.
Sweet.
Starting next week.
Awesome. This is a good time
Later
of year for
this week, yeah, because January the holidays are over,
Mm-hmm.
and now I can actually concentrate on doing a whole lot more. I published I think 30 books last week.
Yeah.
Because I'm finally out and being able to do stuff again. Because I finished a major project that was a pain in my butt.
Right.
But it's done. And
Yeah.
It's getting really good reviews.
Was that the one that was Amazon was giving you trouble over?
Yeah, they're still giving me trouble over it.
They're never not giving you trouble.
Right.
I feel like I need to find some kind of meme that describes your and Amazon's relationship, but I don't.
We can just move on to how good this wine is. And my relationship with this wine is considerably better than my relationship with Amazon.
Well, that's not setting the bar especially high.
And it's opening up a bit.
The nose is opening up. Yep, I'm
and
getting.
that bitterness is kind of blown off.
The blackberry's still there, but I'm getting some almost. There's almost like a slight syrupy or
Surprisingly,
jammy.
there's no pie crust. Which in the
That's
past,
what I was saying,
looked at my
syrupy.
past notes and there was pie crust in all of them, and this one doesn't have that.
It's a little bit like smelling blackberry preserves as opposed to smelling
blackberry
pie.
pie.
Yeah. That. For lack of a better
It
word,
just doesn't have
slightly
that
sugary
flaky,
sweet.
that feeling that you get. That
Yeah,
makes you think pie.
The baked crust, the wheat aroma, the cereal aroma.
That's not in here, but it's still a really good wine.
Which is interesting because of how much
Bit of
time it's spent in
pepper.
oak. I
Yeah,
usually
it's
associate the
F1.
graham cracker crust with oak character.
And there's a bit of pepper, not a lot.
No, it's not particularly spicy or
And this one's not as
bitey wine.
extractive as past years. So, which might be part of why people gave it a little bit higher ratings than the previous years, because a lot of people don't like big extracted fruit bombs.
Yeah, well, and
although this is still a big extracted fruit bomb.
Well, and there's a spectrum of big extracted fruit bomb, because you can have a big extracted fruit bomb that still has an internal structure, and then a big fruit bomb that's just all over the place and doesn't know what it's doing.
This one definitely knows what it's doing.
Sure. Yeah. It's just expansive. I'm getting a blueberry now as well. Now that it's
I had that
opening
right
up.
out of the gate. Yeah.
But I'm picking it up a lot more than I did at first. That overwhelming blackberry liqueur has diminished somewhat.
Yeah, and this is hot. It's 16.1%. It doesn't actually finish hot. I've had other years that did, so that part's nice.
Yeah,
but, be careful.
I've had wines that were less alcoholic than this, where you felt the alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, you're
more.
not feeling it. I was anticipating feeling it because, as I said, in previous vintages, I have noticed that it finished hot. This one is not finishing hot.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to realize, looking back over just maybe the last 40 years or so, you can see how much warmer the world's wine regions have gotten just by the level of alcohol you're able to get without any kind of interference whatsoever.
No intervention in Europe.
Yeah.
16% still, and it's hard to keep it down to 14.
Yeah, and those Napa wines we were looking at from the 70s were struggling. None of them hit 13.
Yep.
And, I don't think they were doing anything. They probably weren't picking any earlier, I wouldn't imagine.
No,
I
I
assume they
think
were
it's
doing
really
things.
just a matter that it's getting hotter now.
Mhm, it's
And
getting
so
hotter.
There's more sugars in the grape as a result.
And there's also, the climate is the big part, but you can also breed yeasts. Certain yeasts will die at 13 or 40% alcohol.
And now we've got yeasts that don't.
Yeah, exactly. They've bred them to basically, and I think part of that is because the sugar content is so much higher.
They
It's
had
like,
to.
yeah, it's like you don't want a Cabernet Sauvignon that the yeast gets to 40% and die, and then you've got sugar left over. It's like, what am I gonna do with this semi-sweet Cabernet Sauvignon?
Oh, yeah.
That would be unfortunate.
Sell it to Chateau Marmosset.
But the problem is a semi-sweet Cabernet Sauvignon. It has nobody that's going to like it because people like you and me aren't going to like it because it's a semi-sweet Cabernet
And people
Sauvignon.
who like
And the super
semi-sweets
sweet,
aren't
super
gonna like
sweet,
it 'cause it's
exactly,
Cabernet.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
you're
it's going to
right.
have nobody that likes it.
That looks like we have another question.
Yeah, I think that leads very well into Dante's question. They said some wines go great pairing with certain foods. What would you pair this wine with?
Peppery steak, for sure. It would go really well with any kind of lamb
Yep.
or goats.
Yep.
I would even consider doing it with, and a lot of people are going to be like, ugh, but it would go really, really well with kangaroo.
Okay, I've never actually had
I've
kangaroo.
had kangaroo. This would be perfect with kangaroo. But kangaroo is kind of like, it tastes like if you could like take a goat and breed it with a cow, its meat would taste like a
Okay.
kangaroo in
That
my
sounds
mind.
tasty.
When I've had kangaroo, that's what I've thought of it.
Sure. I would definitely agree with all of those.
Pizza, definitely. You want something really spicy.
And also very hearty.
Yeah.
Like a beef stew, a lamb stew would go really well with this. Also, because of the incredible extracted fruit character, one of the nice things about wines like this, especially it being a Cabernet Sauvignon, is if you like vegetables or any kind of dish done with a fruit sauce, whether it's like a Cumberland sauce or a coulis of some sort. One Christmas I made Brussels sprouts. And I made this berry. What's that? Oh no! I roasted them. I roasted them. They were wonderful. Don't steam or boil your Brussels sprouts. It's ruining them. You want to roast them.
Them will make them a little bit sweeter and a little more palatable. I
Yeah,
still don't
browns-
like them, but I
browns the edges.
recognize that they get easier to eat if you do those.
They're like
things.
little chips. But I made it with a berry reduction sauce over top of it, and this would have been a great. We had red wine with that, but this would have been a wonderful pairing with it just because of that extracted fruit character. So there are two things that basically you can do with wine. You can use the wine to compensate for aspects of the food. In this case, the tannin and the protein, the tannin of the wine and the protein of the meat play off each other nicely. And you can also flavor match. If you have a flavor in a wine that you're looking to try to match with something in the food, you can kind of run them in parallel that way as well. So
let's get some more wine here. I'm going to drink all the rest of this. Sorry, Will. Actually, I'm not going to do that to Will.
actually, more often than not, you're the one telling me to finish it.
Yep, I usually am. Yeah. Katrina, did you want to sip of this before it all goes away? No? Okay.
It sounds good though.
It is very yummy. It's very
Powerful,
yummy.
intense.
And now that he's poured it and then stirred it up, I've got that huge nose all over again.
Yeah, but
oak
it's
is still
interesting.
really
It's been
strong.
opening up still in there, even so, because it's not that blackberry liqueur thing is not as intense as it was.
The bitterness is gone completely, and it's much more
Perfumey.
Well, I was going to say silkier in the mouth.
Oh
but,
yeah,
but
definitely.
it's
Yeah,
also
on the
more
texturally,
perfumey.
absolutely.
Definitely, there's a bit of rose in here, a little bit of lavender, and a little bit of
Yep, I'm
lilac.
picking up. I was gonna say I was picking up some more floral characteristics that I hadn't been as.
I get rose, lilac, and
I actually, I'm not sure when it'll go up, probably sometime this month, I would imagine, but I wrote an article on Cabernet Sauvignon for the blog.
Oh, good.
And I think I mentioned this last time, it's very difficult to write a short piece about Cabernet Sauvignon because I think it's now the most planted.
It's a three-parter, man.
Yeah, I mean, you can write whole books, and you can write whole books just about one country's expression of Cabernet Sauvignon,
Never mind,
let alone the
just
grape
Cabernet,
itself.
yeah.
But one of the things that was cool about it, reading about it, was the part of the reason that Cabernet Franc, the Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc are related to each other somehow, and they both crossbred to form Cabernet Franc. Or I'm sorry, the other way around. Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc together created Cabernet Sauvignon. And all those grapes are super high in methoxypyrazines. And part of the reason that Cabernet Sauvignon has that menthol, eucalyptus characteristic, and when it's less ripe, bell pepper, is because of those methoxypyrazines. So one of the things that makes this grape so interesting and so unique is that unusually high level of chemicals that is part of the reason a lot of people don't like Cabernet Franc. That vegetal aroma, if you pick it a little too early, never have to worry about that with Dave Finney, and by and large in Napa Valley.
Too early. No, they know they want big and extracted, and that means leaving it on the vine a little bit longer.
And it's a late ripener, and part of the reason that site selection is so important is it's going, okay, well, we want to plant Cabernet Sauvignon. We need an area that's going to get a lot of sun exposure. We don't have to worry about these kinds of flavors occurring in the grapes. But if you do it right, it leads to that incredible mentholated eucalyptus, mint, and it's something that really only happens with Cabernet Sauvignon. I've never really run across mintiness in other wines.
I haven't picked up that eucalyptus kind of thing. I mean, I think I may have seen it a few times with Syrah, but nothing else.
I was going to say, if there's one other grape that had the level of methoxypyrazines that Cab does, it's Syrah, because of that stemmy, sometimes vegetal, brambly.
Those are the only ones that I can think of. I mean, every now and then you'll get it in a Bordeaux blend because there'll be
because it has some cab
in it for that to happen. Yeah.
But yeah, no, these peculiar little chemical fingerprints, or whatever you want to call them, of different grapes is one of the things that makes the world of wine so interesting to me. Yeah. Is people will say, oh, well, there's two types of wines, white and red, and I'm like, really? You think
when
it's
I
that
go
simple?
to a restaurant or a bar, and I'm like, what do you have for wines? And they just tell me the colors. I know they don't know anything.
Right.
If they just tell me the berry, I know they still don't know anything.
Right.
Because I've got to know who made it and where is it from. Because just telling me that it's a cab, it doesn't tell me anything. It tells me more than just if you tell me if it's red or white, but not much more. If I don't know what year it was done, where it was done, who the winemaker was, I don't know what the expression is.
Right. Well, and one of the things I would do when I worked at Wine Lab is people would ask me what I recommended, and I would ask them what they liked. Not because if they said I like a cab, I wouldn't say, oh, here's our cab. I go, tell me the things that you like, and tell me how adventurous you're trying to be. And if you want to get really adventurous by using the idea of what you like, I can recommend something. It'll be out of left field, but it'll be similar. And and if you hate it, then that'll tell me something. If you love it, that'll tell me something, and we'll move from there. I was there. The GM really hated me giving out samples, and I'm like, it's a half ounce of wine.
Really? That's stupid.
Her priorities were in all the wrong places. But I mean, my whole thing is that in order to reach the point at which we were losing money, I'd have to give away, I calculated, like 30 free samples. Within 2 or 3, you've sold someone a glass of wine.
Right.
And you've given them a really neat little experience because they feel special and people like being taken care of.
People definitely like that. When I went into that seaside wine tasting, and the guy was like, saw me on Vivino and said, what are you on? What's your rating? And I was like 23. He's like, oh, you're in the top 23% or the top 2300. I remember. And I was like, no, dude, I am number 23, which I'm not anymore, but I was at the time.
Right.
And he's like, you're not drinking any of this crap. I just edited what he said for family. But he took it all away and he brought better wines.
Right.
So that's all, and it of course makes you go, that's cool. So I was much happier than I would have been if I just drank the crap that he had out to start with for everybody, until he realized that I was somebody that probably could appreciate better wines.
Right.
And so of course I bought some of the better wines, and that made him happy, and we were both happy.
Well, and also, I mean, as a server, you get plenty of people who come in, and they're perfectly nice and polite, but they're just there to have a glass of wine or two, and they're not really thinking too hard about it.
Yeah. And
then every so often, you get someone who's coming in, and they're really searching for an intellectual experience. And then those 6 hours that you've been bored, you're like, okay, what can I do to make this more exciting for you? And so it's fun for both people.
I know. I've told this story before. I went to Vegas. I went down to probably the best wine cellar in Vegas, and they had like 200 wines you could have a glass of.
Yeah.
And so they had them in pairs. They had them paired out so
you
could get a flight of 5. Or you could go through and just choose 5 out of all the flights, which is what I did.
Yeah.
And then I put in my order, and I'd been ignored. It was like, this long-haired guy walked in. I did not look like a suit. I was in Vegas. They were just looking at me as like, no money there.
Right.
And then I put in my choice, and I heard the sommelier say, put this one in. because I picked the 5 best wines.
Mm-hmm.
I went all the way through. It was not the 5 most expensive, but the 5 best. And
Right.
he spotted that I had figured that out.
Right.
And he came over and spent the entire night at my table. And
Yep.
all the Texas cowboys with their hats and whatnot were all looking like, why is the sommelier wanting to hang out with a long-haired dude? Well, the long-haired dude knows wine.
Yep, and speaking from experience, I would try, working as a server, it's a little different because you have a bunch of tables, but as a sommelier, you might have 1 or 2 people in on a given night that really are looking for that type of experience. And so you're not just selling them wine, you're selling them on the total experience of getting taken care of, being shown stuff they might not otherwise have, and getting recommendations. I mean, that's the whole...
And talking with another wine.
And talking with another wine
passionate
person.
about
Mhm.
wine,
Yep.
yeah.
No, the number of times that I've been out and really had those kinds of things happened, whether I was the customer or whether I was the sommelier, were always some of the most fun, because you always come away with something new.
Yep.
One of those experiences in 2012 was how I found out about Mencia. The greatest, my first experience with it. Never had it before. And the sommelier at the Four Seasons brought me a free glass because I told her I was there for the sommelier course, and we ended up having a discussion about various wine books that we liked. And the thing is when you work in the industry, one of the things that you have at your disposal is access to all sorts of stuff and the ability to write stuff off. So, if you want to give somebody a free glass of something, you can.
Right.
The only person you have to justify it to is your manager. You can be like, well, look at how much they bought. They bought $300.
And of course, the thing about it is you can write off what you gave, and so the government's paying half of it anyway.
Sure. Well, and also, if it's a bottle that's already open, the first glass paid for it. Every glass after that is gravy. So it's like, oh, sorry, we only made 3 glasses worth of profit instead of 4 off of that bottle,
But I sold a bottle of it when they tested it, bro.
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's the other thing. You can't ever look at things
This is
as
driving
just
me out of my mind. Just getting it out of the way. Sorry, folks.
as just outlay. It's that person may not have spent that much on their initial purchase, but they're going to come back and they're going to be a repeat customer. They're now basically an investment. Like what you gave away or what you comped them was an investment,
Right.
And they're now returning on that
when
investment.
they order something based off of what they taste. I mean, when somebody brings me wines and I get to taste a number of different wines, it always makes me happy, and I almost always end up buying a bottle.
Yep.
So
we're
makes sense to do that.
neurologically programmed. It's a feedback loop. It's pleasurable. It's fun. All right, now.
And I've always been a hedonist.
I'm getting slightly more like savory spice character off of this now, a little bit.
And this is the first time this far in that I've even noticed that there were any
Yeah.
tannins. So the tannins are really super gentle on this, which is surprising considering, that, well, I guess a year and a half
Right.
isn't all that much time in oak, but still I would have expected more tannic expression than I'm getting.
Yeah, especially given that almost half of it was new. That's
Yeah.
that's very.
Yeah, this is not very tannic at all.
Which tells you something. This wine probably has a massive amount of unfermentable sugars.
Yeah.
Anytime you have that, and sugars don't necessarily come across as perceptibly sweet. Not all sugars taste like sucrose. But what sugars do is they limit the ability of tannic compounds and bitter compounds and acidity to influence. They counterbalance each other. I don't know if it's because they bind to the same taste buds or if it's just an overall smoothing out. But it's 16.1% alcohol, and the fruit extraction. I'm guessing the unfermentable sugars on this are through the roof, and that's
I was
contributing.
expecting tannic back end. And
Yeah.
There's just very little tannins. I didn't even notice a tannin until just now as it's opening up.
Yeah.
And even then, this was a super gentle, round, smooth tannin that did in no way, if you're not someone who likes dry wines because of the tannic expression,
Right.
that you're going to have to worry about. Which is unusual for a wine as big, and this thing's huge.
I was going to
as it
say
is.
that's really the only thing that might put off newer or people with more delicate palates about this is just the bigness of the aroma and the flavor.
It punches you in the mouth.
The tannic structure and the acidity are not
No,
not
no issue.
overwhelming you in any
No
way
issue at
whatsoever.
all.
No, this is very much just a pure fruit expression.
It was very well put together.
Yeah,
And, you know,
absolutely.
You know, I know that Keith at the vintage seller tells me this wine has no soul. I would have to disagree. I think you should try it again.
But Keith is also very much a person who is looking, with the exception of a few California wineries like Ridge, looking for the old world expression.
Yep, and I love both old and new world.
Absolutely.
In fact, when the two meet, that's when I'm happiest.
Right. No, I mean, I remember talking with Keith when I worked at Vintage Cellar. It's clear that, like, like my dad, his tastes run more towards the French and Spanish old world expressions of fruit. And so something like this, it's not necessarily that it's offensive, and it's part of the reason that I've been very careful about which California wines I introduce my dad to. It's not that I think that he'd hate them, but I'm looking for ones that are actually going to make him go, oh, wow, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to find the California wineries that are doing something a little bit more old world style. This is very much not that. This is very much
this is a new world wine, period.
Modern
nothing
new
old world
wine.
about it at all. Nothing. And I'm okay with that. I love both.
Sure.
And I'd be happy if it had both, but this is one of my favorite wines.
Well, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to expect to make wines in California that are exactly like something out of Bordeaux or
it would be.
Burgundy.
I mean, it's just hotter and drier.
Well, yeah, and it's completely different. Not just the overall temperature, it's completely different
level.
climates.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Everything about it's different.
Sure.
And yet, you know, I absolutely adore California Bordeaux blends, and I absolutely adore French Bordeaux blends.
Absolutely.
So,
because they're the right expression for the fruit given where they are. Work with what you've got. It's part of the thing that used to annoy me back in 2007 when I started working in industry, where people were talking about how to make Virginia into the next California.
you can't do it.
You cannot do it. And not only can you not do it, you shouldn't try.
Right.
Because then California's going to beat you at being the best California that there is.
Because California's California and you're Virginia.
Right. And
you can't grow Cabernet Sauvignon to save your freaking life.
There are certain little pockets of Virginia, but if you're talking about a broad spectrum, absolutely, yeah. You have
Cabernet Franc, sure.
Yeah.
Sauvignon, absolutely not.
Well, and the thing is Virginia's part of the mistake that people make is Virginia is very fertile farmland.
Yep.
You don't necessarily want to plant grape. If you ever look at pictures of some of the world's best wine regions, a lot of them are highly arid. Look at pictures of the Bekaa Valley in
Lebanon. It looks like deserts with these bushes sticking up.
Yeah, and then like you get to places like Napa. Napa has farmland too, but it's a different type of farmland in Virginia.
I just got vanilla on that sip for the first time. Just got vanilla. Vanilla pipe tobacco, really.
Did I tell you about how I actually began teaching myself to find vanilla in wines?
No.
It was kind of accidental. What I did is when I was working at Chateau, I was trying to teach people how to look for
a Chateau Marmoset for those of you at home.
It was after I became the sommelier. I was teaching people how to pick up on, because we had people in the tasting room who would say, "Oh, you're going to get notes of apple off of this Chardonnay," and they didn't know what that meant. And so I thought, well, rather than just have them parrot a line off of a sheet, I'd like them to actually have an intellectual, emotional understanding of this. So I took Vidal Blanc, which was our mildest white wine, and I put like a whole bunch of apple into one and a whole bunch of lemon into another. And so I did like 5 different fruit flavors. And I had people not so much taste them, but just like smell them, and I think maybe taste them too, just to feel like what the flavor and aroma compounds were like in the wine. But one of them was vanilla.
Yeah.
And I put enough in there that it was like
vanilla.
And but in an alcohol matrix, because alcohol or vanilla in your hot chocolate or just smelling the vanilla bottle is not the same thing as having it mixed in with all the other flavors and aromas and having it in an alcohol substrate like this. And so it's like, oh, that's what that is. Okay, it's like I'm trying to teach these people and I learned something myself. So always remain humble.
Yeah, the vanilla is starting to take over. Actually, this sip it was an even stronger expression than the last. And I'm down to my last probably 3 or 4 sips of the wine. But for me, that's part of the coolness of the experience is that this wine has been developing the entire time I've been drinking it. And I really want that.
And it was it was decanted for an hour.
It was decanted for an hour, and then we're almost we're probably just about a half hour in.
Yeah.
So this thing's been going for an hour and a half, closing in on 2 at this point.
It just occurred to me with wines like this, you never actually truly experience the entire development curve. You either experience the first half or the second half.
The reality is, to really experience the entire curve, you would probably need a magnum of it. So
yes.
you could have twice as much as we're drinking, and you would end up probably half in the bag, if not.
Well, I was going to say you need a magnum and then something to distract us, because even with a magnum, we might still kind of foreshorten the curve a little bit.
Maybe. But I mean,
we'd probably also pace ourselves a little bit.
We'd have another hour to go.
True.
We have a question.
I have a question.
Okay, wonderful.
Now that you're talking about a magnum, would you decant the entire thing at the same time if you have that much?
That depends on how many people I have drinking with
Yeah.
me. Because if we're going to drink the whole thing, yes, I would.
Yes.
If we are not, no, I would not.
Right.
I would just decant
Decant
the
half
amount
of it,
that we
yeah.
were going to drink.
Okay.
I would assume you need a bigger decanter. That wouldn't.
Well, then that one there, yes. But
Yes.
I have larger decanters. I own like a half dozen decanters that do different things in different ways when they decant. I mean, I have one decanter that I think is the prettiest one that I own, and it's like got Bacchus and lots of grapes and stuff in the design. And what it does is you pour the wine in the top. And so say you break your cork in it. The corks float to the top and the wine comes out of the bottom. So when
it has a little
you've
spigot.
compromised your cork, you can use this decanter to make up for it, so you don't have to strain your wine.
Right.
Wow.
Because the cork flies up, the wine comes down.
Yep. Correct.
It's perfect for that.
Okay, thank you.
If you ever break the cork off in the bottle, and it's tricky because it'll start to. But
You want to come at it sideways.
Yeah,
after that
and
to
if you
try to
roll
pull
the pour a
rest
little
of
bit,
it out.
you can mitigate it for as long as
You can
possible.
often get it out, not always, but
Right.
often. I mean, I think this is our 25th, 26th review.
Yeah.
And I've had one cork break in half that I couldn't get out.
And it was an older
fix.
one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a 2010.
Yeah.
So, it was a 10-year-old cork, and it broke. And I've had other corks break, but I've always been able to pull them out in some of the reviews. If you go back, you would see that.
Yeah.
But one that I couldn't get out.
One of the things that I was unaware of, because I always thought of synthetic corks as just being not all that good, but when I worked at Chateau, the winemaking team told me they ordered a bunch of synthetic corks, and apparently the polymer industry is such now that you can, because it's acting as an oxygen buffer. So basically, like the softer, more pliable the polymer is, the more oxygen it's letting in, and the tougher and less pliable it is. So you can actually order corks, be like, oh yeah, we don't need to worry about these being like super oxygen permeable. We're expecting to, or we want to let more oxygen in. Or we want to let almost no oxygen, and we want it to be almost like a screw cap. You can do that now. So it's like, synthetic corks aren't as awful as I thought they were. I don't see them very often in higher end wines, so maybe they're
I've
not.
never seen them in a higher end wine.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen screw tops, but not not the plastic cork.
So my guess is they're probably still less of an oxygen barrier than regular cork is, or otherwise I'd see them in higher end wines.
Right, because the higher end wine wants you
Correct.
it wants it to age.
Right.
So if you're opening up, especially something like a Chateau de Pop that needs to age, if you put in a cork that doesn't allow it to age, then in 30 years, it's going to be way too tight. You open it up and all you're going to get is tannic expression and just tannins blowing all the rest of the tastes out. And any wine that I've ever had that all I can taste is wood or tannins, I'm just done. I'm not drinking it.
Yep. Well, and that is the interesting thing about cork is that it is one of the it's one of the best barriers to oxygen that also lets in a very small amount of oxygen.
Right, the amount that allows it to develop and be different from year to year.
Right, but it's also kind of completely. I mean, you have to think that back when they were first, corking bottles. The quality of wine back in the Middle Ages, I have to assume, wasn't all that.
Pretty low, yeah.
Yeah, so they weren't really thinking about, like, I'm going to age this for 10 years. They just want something to stop
They
it.
could throw Mega Purple and
absolutely.
and liquid smoke in back in the day.
Well, they didn't use a liquid smoke and Mega Purple. They used what was it? The Romans. They used
urine.
Well,
and,
Oh, gross.
it is true. There's a very gross thing, but then goat urine.
Fish sauce. They put fish sauce.
Goat
in
urine went into like 90% of the wine back in the day.
Really?
Yeah. And so there was like this whole, there was a whole industry for if you owned goats, you were rich because people wanted the urine in their wine, which, I find wildly disgusting, but it was a thing. And when there was like a couple of years where there was like an issue with the goats, and they immediately switched to human urine. And so the Romans used to throw lead and human urine in their wine, and then they would drink it and talk about how wonderful it was. And I'm just like,
How bad was the
Oh my
wine?
God! Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, they grew the grapes,
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, the English just until about 50 to 100 years ago used to put 25% sugar into their wines. They might as well have been Plateau Marmoset,
Yeah.
because they were just throwing sugar into everything.
Well, and what the Romans would do is they didn't have sugar because there wasn't sugar cane,
Right,
but they
right,
would
'cause
they
they
would
hadn't
put
been to South
they would put
America
honey, they would put salt, they would put fish sauce, they would put all sorts
Goat urine,
all sorts
human
of stuff in their
urine.
wine. And the thing is that it was a completely different culture because wine at that point was not the wine was a vehicle to get drunk, and I'm sure that some there were probably a few winemakers here and there who were doing the best that they could, but with primitive methods, there's only so good that you could do, and so all of those additives were to compensate for probably lower quality wine.
Yeah.
Now that we don't have to do that, we're talking about the wine as this sort of thing on its own level, and it seems abhorrent to us that anybody would ever screw with it.
Because we're getting pretty much the perfect expression of these grapes
Right.
today. Even the bad winemakers. I mean, if Apothic Red or the Predator could go
Yes.
back in time to like 5 AD,
Right.
it would blow everybody's doors off. Nobody had tasted anything that good.
They
in
might
their
not even know that it was
whole
wine.
lives. Right, they might
might
decide
not
it was
be
something
anything
new.
like-
It
yes.
would be so far above
Yes.
what those folks were able to drink.
Right. But at the same time, our own appreciation of wine is always going to be, 100 years from now, who knows what
People
what
think
wine
of
will
the
be
wines
like.
we
Yeah.
were drinking because there'll be some
Microchemistry of screwing around with it at
there'll be
that
some
level.
advance that we didn't see coming, and wine will be completely different in 100 years. Which I'm hoping I'll be there to see it.
Yeah. Oh, right. The telomere problem.
All right,
Hopefully
right,
that'll be solved by then.
Exactly. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us. There's not really much more to say about this one.
No, we can't.
It's
We can't
opened
really
up
praise it
very,
enough.
very nicely. Yeah, very, very good. Like so many of the wines that we review, I've got to find some bad wines to review, just so you'll know that if we get a bad wine, we will kill it.
Yes.
But this is not a bad wine.
That's
This
the problem
is a
with living in the
fantastic
modern
wine.
world is most
Was
wines
this
are pretty
a-
okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, the worst wines, even the wines that I just
Yeah.
mentioned, I would never. All of them get at least 3 stars.
Right.
I'm like I rag on Apothic and I rag on Predator, but I still give them 3 out of 5 stars.
Yeah,
they're
acceptable.
They're
There's
acceptable.
nothing wrong with
yeah,
them.
exactly.
They're just not
exactly.
they're not what we're looking for.
Yeah.
How many
So-
stars does this get?
This one gets 4.5 for sure. Is what I would give it. 4.5 stars out of 5.
Lauren and I generally say 5 for the truly transcendent.
Yeah.
Double back is a 5-star.
This is one that I'll drink anytime that
Yes.
I run into it and I can afford it.
Yeah.
Anytime.
I'll drink it any time Warren can afford it.
Yeah, which is pretty much any time.
Right.
But so again, thank you very much for joining us. We will catch you next week. Cheers.
Sláinte.